'Cause I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof.
Good afternoon. It's Thursday. It's 3 o'clock, and it's time for you to be adrenalized. That's right, folks. It's time to get the blood flowing and get re-energized and on this Thursday afternoon. Why? Because you're here, you're alive, and it's time to be motivated. Be motivated for whatever it is you're looking forward to this weekend. You know, I can't wait I always love the weekends and can't wait for them to be there. But, you know, it's what motivates us. What are we working so hard for all week long? What are you striving for? Are you accomplishing what you want to accomplish? If you're not, give us a call. You know, today we're going to be talking. I want to hear from you. I want to hear about you, what's going on in your life. And specifically, I want to just recap what our show last week. So this is Tom Marino in the Tom Marino Show. And last week, we started to talk about fear and the interesting role that fear plays in our lives and the importance that it plays. It's really essential to our survival. And, you know, we had some people calling in. We had Ed from Manorville who brought up some really great points about fear as a collective whole when trying to influence people to follow a certain way and think about, you know, an alternative to a current problem. You know, we start to think about, you know, how fear changes what we do. You know, what are you afraid of? What are the things that you're afraid of right now? Are you afraid to travel? Are you afraid to go into work? You know, some days, you know, a lot of people, Long Island Railroad is empty these days. It's not as full as it used to be. You know, a lot of people are working remotely. A lot of people are afraid to get back into public transportation and get on that railroad. You know, they're afraid to catch COVID. What is it that you are afraid of? You know, so give me a call, 631-451-1039. And, you know, we talked about how fear also paralyzes us. And, you know, we had a couple of callers too. Stormy was on and she was talking about, you know, she wasn't sure she wanted to take the next step in her life, in her career, because she was just afraid of what the difference it would cause. You know, a lot of times we talk about things that we're not sure we want to do. And really the root cause of that is because we're afraid of it. We're afraid of the unknown. We're afraid of what it means for us. And sometimes we're just afraid to go through the torture and the pain or the struggle of the situation, right? We avoid situations because we're afraid of what it means. And, you know, avoiders, you know, we talk about the saboteurs, and avoiders are people who, you know, when that saboteur arises, you're looking to avoid conflict. And oftentimes people avoid the conflict because they're afraid. They don't want to get into conflict. And what happens is you avoid and it keeps going and nothing changes, and you avoid it again and nothing changes. And it really is just because you're afraid to have a little bit of a tough conversation. You know, we have tough conversations every day, whether in our businesses, at home, there's always tough conversations. I was talking to a former colleague of mine earlier today, and, you know, there's a lot going on in the industry of healthcare. There's a lot of things going on. You know, in a lot of our industries, inflation is going up. You know, we see that every day on the news. You're seeing that, you know, Tide and is raising their prices, and you know, I saw Pringles was going up in price. All these things are going up in price, right? We're responding to the pandemic and the need to increase our economy and improve our economy, but we're causing a lot of fear for people in doing those things. You know, we're causing fear. Am I going to have enough money to pay for that? You know, 7% inflation rate is really insane. You know, we haven't seen that since the early 80s. And I'm not an economist. I'm a life coach and an executive, but I pay attention to these things because, you know, it's the foundation of what causes fear and a lot of concern for people that I work with. And it just becomes part of that overwhelm that we experience. So, you know, fear plays a very interesting role in how it overwhelms us, how it causes us to burn out. You know, I work with a couple, and sometimes they're just so afraid to talk to each other about a situation, and they're afraid about how the other person is going to respond. So they don't say it. Well, why wouldn't we say it? You know, we need to say it. We need to to go out there and make sure we see, we say what we're feeling. Don't avoid those situations. So I see we have Anthony from Miller Place on the line. So Anthony, welcome to the show. Thanks for calling in.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Great, thank you. I appreciate these types of discussions as well, the opportunity to chime in of sorts and lend you my 2 cents. I worked in the field of developmental disabilities, whereby the amount of training they give you to deal or cope with the many stressful situations that arise when working with people of various behaviors.
Right.
It can be quite a daunting challenge. And that's the one thing that I learned over the 20 years that I had done it, was that the fear, when fear overtakes you in any instance, all your training goes out the window. Because there are some sort of primordial things that take over. It's almost like a flight or fight response.
Yep.
So thereby it kind of makes it a very challenging field to work in. And I do feel very sorry for a great many of the people, because it's very easy to lose sight of training and all the safeguards that they try to incorporate into these types of scenarios. But ultimately, fear overtakes one. And that's why, we have fire drills, and they try to train you over and over so you'll do things without having to think about it, because once fear takes hold of you or grips you, and it comes without your, everybody, like, boys don't cry, it comes on in the, sometimes you could see a bug on the floor and it might scare you in a way you might not normally be, but it just catches you off guard, and then it puts you in a place whereby you just choke.
Right.
You lose all your training. And I think that's, like air traffic controllers and various people in stressful jobs have to go through these degrees of training that are so very important to the success or failures of their abilities,
Yeah, absolutely. You're bringing up some really incredible points, and thank you for what you've done working with people with disabilities. It's really, an honorable thing when anyone who works with people who have regular struggle in their everyday life, it's the point of fear, that fight or flight mechanism that kicks in when we feel threatened or we feel that, things go out the window, right? Yeah, your training sometimes goes out the window. It really takes someone with an extreme amount of training and just discipline to not allow fear to take over. As you were talking, I was thinking about what we see, what they train in, with the Navy SEALs, and how trained a Navy SEAL is to be able to manage their emotion in that situation, because they can totally detach from their emotion. And emotion plays such a critical role in our fear and everything else. If you can hang on, Anthony, we have to take a quick short break. Oh, no, we're not taking a break right now. I'm sorry, I was mistaken. Let me ask you this question: what's a situation that you felt you were confronted with fear, that you really lost your training? What was the situation that got in the way for you?
Oh, well, it was my last day of work. It was a 17-hour shift because people didn't show up. And then the people that did show up to take the next shift they were new, they were green behind the ear, and they had no training. And I had an individual who would bite and do all kinds of crazy things, and it was me against her. And I remember she had come out of her room, and, she was, twice my size and very dangerous if she got to you.
Yeah.
And I just choked. She came around a doorway, and I didn't expect her. And then once she did that, and like she was in close proximity to me, I was so afraid of her that everything was gone. I didn't know what else to do. It's like,
yeah. What did you wind up doing?
Well, I told her, well, look, I'm going to call the manager, and I'm going to get you whatever you want. I didn't.
You acquiesce, right? You gave into it because out of fear. You know what? We're going to take a quick commercial break, and if you can just hold on for a quick break, and we'll come back to you. I want to talk a little bit further about what you did, and I think it brings up a very good point. So this is the Tom Marino Show, and I'm Tom Marino. Give us a call, 631-451-1039. We'll talk to you right after this break.
Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do.
Welcome back to the Tom Marino Show. I'm Tom Marino, and we are talking about fear. Before the break, we had Anthony from Miller Place on the line, and I asked him to be gracious enough to hold on to continue our conversation. But I want to hear from you. So give us a call, 631-451-1039. And Anthony was talking about how fear, can help. Well, if fear gets in the way of the things that we're trained to do. And we were just talking about some of the action that he took when he was very afraid and kind of gave into it. And we kind of sometimes surrender to that emotion of fear, and it causes some kind of paralysis in us. Would you agree, Anthony, that you were a little bit paralyzed in that moment and you just wanted to be out of that situation?
Absolutely. And, the problem is that, we're all trying to do things the best that we can. But, there's some people like astronauts have the right stuff,
Mm-hmm.
The space capsule is going to break up in about 15 minutes if we don't solve this problem and fix it real quick.
Right.
You've got to be able to think on your feet in those instances, and not everybody can do that.
Exactly.
Not everybody has the right stuff,
Yeah, it really does take it takes a really good training to be able to do that. We talk about in healthcare, I came from healthcare. I was a physician assistant by training. We talk about de-escalation, right? When somebody is starting to get very agitated, for us to respond in the opposite way and de-escalate the situation. And it's not always so easy when we have fear. We can have that training of de-escalation, but in the moment when it happens, we become paralyzed. And that's what gets in the way of a lot of people's fears, is the paralysis that it causes. And, last week we were talking about, integrating fear into your life and working through the fear, working through it and making it an advisor and a friend. So what was something in retrospect that you learned from that situation?
Well, I learned that it's an impossible job because all the academics and all the policy wonks and all the people that write these policies, unless you're in that situation or in that setting at that moment, they can always find fault and always do in every response that we take to circumvent or try to navigate any instance or situation. And what it occurs is because of your primordial instinct.
Right.
If you don't, it's like you want to stand up to what you're afraid of, because if you show fear, like a dog will come at you worse. But if you stand up to that dog, so these are instincts that take over.
Yep.
That you don't necessarily have the ability to control or refrain from. So all the training that they give you, it sounds all well and good, but when the building's on fire kind of thing, you just want to run for the door. You don't know what the training goes right out the window.
Exactly. And you also mentioned that you were at the end of a 17-hour shift, right? And the exhaustion that you were feeling was also playing a role, right? Exactly. And even as well prepared as you can be in that situation, there's still that instinctual response that happens, that fight or flight that happens, and it can still get in the way of you being successful in that situation. And I'm sorry that you had that outcome. But, again, the important thing is that when we experience these situations is to gather what we learn from that situation, what we need to do differently, and to really, give the feedback in order to have other people be successful in those situations. So, Anthony, I really appreciate the call. Thanks for calling in. It's interesting, fatigue. There's so many things in there that I heard from him, the fatigue of the situation. And when we are exhausted, and that's often a sign of burnout, right? Is when we are exhausted. And exhaustion just continues to perpetuate that overwhelming feeling that we feel when we're burnt out, and fear seems to creep in even further and take control of the situation. When I work with my clients, one of the first things I do is just try to understand what the fears are and what are the things that are getting in the way, so that I can address what they need. And even with the tools that Anthony was given, he didn't have the tools honed well enough, or he didn't have enough training that really allowed him to be successful in that situation. And that's what we have to focus on is when we are fearful, is what do we need out of that? So give me a call, 631-451-1039. That's 451-1039. I want to hear from you. Tell me what you're afraid of right now. What is that thing that's getting in the way of you? We are live on the air, just so everybody knows. This is live. It is 3:25, so there's my validation that we're live. And I want everybody to, get on the air, get on the lines. I want to hear what you're afraid of, and let's work through some of these. Like I was talking about a little bit earlier before Anthony called, when we're in relationships, we don't express our needs, and it creates a lot of fear in the relationship sometimes. I was saying I work with a couple and they're afraid to say to each other what they really need to say. And it's interesting when that fear paralyzes them, because it's sometimes not having the tools. Even though Anthony had the tools, it's sometimes not having the tools that makes it worse, right? So if the fear is that you're not going to say it right, or the fear is that the person that you're telling it to is going to get mad with you, you've got to figure out how the best way to say it is, how to express yourself, how to communicate it in order for you to alleviate the fear of that situation. Rehearse it. Think about what you really want to say. Think about how it should be said, and give your partner the choice to feel either angry or upset. Don't take that choice away from them, because that will cause more frustration. And you will eventually manifest and create the situation that you ultimately feared. All right, we're going to take another commercial break. Give us a call, 631-451-1039. This is Tom Marino and the Tom Marino Show. We'll be back right after this.
What you want to do. Here come bad news, talking this and that. Clap along if you feel like.
And welcome back to the Tom Marino Show. I'm your host, Tom Marino. We've been talking about fear today. In the first half hour, we had a caller, Anthony from Miller Place, who called in talking about some of his fear and how it got in the way of his training in a difficult situation. And I want to hear from you. We are live. This is a live radio show coming to you from MacArthur Airport. The number is 631-451-1039, 631-451-1039. And if you're looking to reach out to me, please visit my website at tommarino.com. That's tommarino.com. One of the things that Anthony brought up in the first segment of the show is really how fear gets in our way, right? Fear gets in our way. It gets in our way of doing a lot of things that we're trained to do or that we want to do. And fear is a big component to why people don't keep their New Year's resolutions, right? We're afraid to try something new sometimes. We're afraid to set that goal, and we're not sure what we want to do. So, did you know yesterday was when most people have abandoned their New Year's resolutions? That's it. It's over. January 19th, yesterday, game over, resolution done. But sometimes there's a lot of fear that underlies those resolutions. And, I heard we should make New Year's intentions rather than making New Year's resolutions. And I thought that was a very interesting way to describe it. Make the intention to do something different. And, however, whatever it is, if you've abandoned your resolution, it's okay. Today is New Year's Eve. Happy New Year, everybody. Let's get back on that saddle. Let's get things rolling. Let's make those changes. Let's overcome those fears and those obstacles. So set a new intention to do something this year. Answer this question. Pretend it's New Year's Eve 2022. When you look back on this past year, what would you like to say that you did, that you accomplished? And are you going to let fear get in the way of that? One of the things I recently did on LinkedIn, I love to do the polls that are available on LinkedIn, and I love asking people questions and see how they respond to those questions. And I did a poll last week, and the question was, what do you find most challenging about setting New Year's goals? What do you find most challenging about setting New Year's goals? And 33% of the people said that they have difficulty seeing them through. Another 33% said that they have difficulty ensuring that they're achievable. And 27% said it was making them clear and specific enough. And 7% said measuring progress. it seems that the easier thing is to make the measurable progress, right? To see it happen, right? You want to lose weight in 2022. It's easy to get on a scale today, see what what your weight is, and then see how much weight you've lost over the next couple of weeks. And it's not always easy to get on the scale, but what I'm saying is that it's easy to measure your current weight and get to your future weight. We have to make goals specific and achievable. The more likely they're specific and more likely they're achievable, we'll be able to see it through. The more likely to see it through, the more likely to overcome the obstacles, right? And a lot of times those obstacles are fear and our own self-sabotaging talk, the language that we use. One thing that came up for me is the level of commitment that we make to a goal sometimes. Do we set the time aside to work on the goal? Do we make the priority? What are the boundaries that are needed to make this goal happen? So if you're struggling with a goal, let me hear about your New Year's resolution that you have not abandoned yet, that you're struggling though every day to try to make it work. And let's work through it. Give me a call, 631-451-1039, 631-451-1039. And, let's talk about what you're struggling with. And is fear one of the reasons why you're struggling with that goal? So I'm just going to pivot for a second too, because one of the things that came up in the last segment was the fight or flight mechanism. Anthony said that when we're fearful, we lose our training, but it's that fight or flight that takes over. And, that's an adrenaline rush when we have a fight or flight. It's an adrenaline rush. And what I talk about in choosing your adrenalized life is using that adrenaline rush to make positive change, to make things happen. And I try to pivot that fear, that fight or flight, and pivot the emotions of that into making positive change in your life. So when I say I want you to live adrenalized, I want you to be adrenalized, I want you to choose your adrenalized life, I'm talking about using the energy, the motivation from that adrenaline rush, the thing that brings blood to the brain to make decisions and blood to your muscles to help you take action. Because that's what it means to live adrenalized, to be able to make a decision and take action. And a lot of times when we struggle with fear, we can't make decisions. We can't take action. We get paralyzed by that. So I want to clarify that adrenalized life for you. The adrenalized mindset is about using what happens naturally in a fight or flight situation and pivot it to take the action, to make the decision. So let's take some action today. Give me a call, 631-451-1039, 631-451-1039. And let's take some action steps towards achieving your New Year's resolution. We are live on the air, so just give us a call. And this is the Tom Marino Show, and I'm your host, Tom Marino, life and executive coach. I want to talk to you. I want to hear more from you. One of the things, too, that gets in our way of achieving goals is the boundaries that we set. And they're critical to establish in making any type of change. And I want to just talk a little bit about boundaries. Boundaries require us to set expectation. I think of a boundary like a fence, right? We put up fences around our properties for a reason, right? We want privacy. We don't want someone coming onto our property. We want our dog to be able to go out and run around without leaving and getting lost. I have a little Shishan, a Shih Tzu and a Bichon. It's the cutest little dog. Her name is Chelsea. And, she loves to roam outside. But if you let her out there without a leash, she will get away from you. So fence for me is really important so that she can go out. But we use fences to both protect us from what's outside of us and to keep in what's in us and what's on the other on our side. And boundaries serve that purpose. Boundaries are meant to protect us from what's outside of us and not let out what we want to protect, right? And a very important part of a fence is what? How do you get in and out? Well, you need a gate. And the way a gate is meant to work for us is to let things out that we want to let out and let things in that we want to let in. And that's what expectations are. We need to support our boundaries, and the way we support our boundaries is to set expectations. Expectations are the gate, and they provide support to our boundaries. More importantly, clarifying our expectations provides a strong foundation to achieving our goals. So, we sometimes are fearful of what's on the inside and what's on the outside. Sometimes that inside fear is ourselves, our self-sabotaging behaviors, the things that get in the way of us making progress. People who are overwhelmed or stressed have personal boundaries that lack a good foundation. This comes up with people who struggle, especially with the pleaser saboteur. I talked a little bit about the avoider saboteur, but the pleaser saboteur is one of those that provides difficulty in us making good boundaries and having a good foundation. And we are going to talk more about the pleaser and how the pleaser impacts our boundaries after this break. So this is the Tom Marino Show. We are live. We want to hear from you. I want to talk to you. I want to find out what's going on, what fears you're struggling with, what New Year's resolutions you're struggling with to keep. So give us a call, 631-451-1039. That's 631-451-1039. I want to hear from you. We'll be back right after this break.
Here come bad news, talking this and that.
And welcome back to the Tom Marino Show. I'm your host, Tom Marino, and we are live, and we want to hear from you. So give us a call at 631-451-1039. That's 631-451-1039. And today we've been talking about a couple of things. We've been talking about fear. We've been talking about how it gets in the way of things that we want to accomplish, New Year's resolutions, and how fear is the foundation for a lot of the reason why we have difficulty achieving our resolutions. And we've been talking about boundaries and, the pleaser saboteur. Before the break, I was talking about how, the pleaser saboteur is a big one in preventing the type of strong boundaries that we form. And the pleaser, often has difficulty saying no. No is a boundary, right? Many people find it challenging to say no. We call it the pleaser because they're afraid to let people down. There's an underlying fear to why that boundary can't be maintained. So change your perspective for a second. It's not about saying no, but rather learning when it's more appropriate to say yes. Healthy boundaries help us learn the difference to that, right? So think about it as, when is it right to say yes? I mean, sometimes we say yes to things, and then maybe that happened today, right? You're driving home from work, and your boss asked you to do something you really wanted to say no, and you wanted to establish that boundary, and you said yes, and now you're regretting saying yes because now you're overwhelmed. You've got to shift things around. But sometimes we're just afraid to say no because of what that means for us, and fear gets in the way of that. Here's another example. Let's say, this is, a lot of people, when they work, they don't like to go out during the week. They only like to go out on the weekends, right? So let's say you're invited to go out with friends on a weeknight, okay? You're going to go out for dinner and maybe a couple of drinks, and you really don't want to do that because you got work the next day. But let's say you set a boundary for yourself that you're going to stay in on weeknights, okay? And maybe because you want to spend time with your family, or you need to recharge after a long day. With this boundary in place, there's no need to labor over your decision, right? So you set the boundary. You're going to stay home on weeknights. You're not going to go out. Simple. You politely turn down the invitation to go out because it's a weeknight, but you look forward to joining them on the weekend. You tell them, I'll see you on the weekend. I'm not available tonight. But if you do that every time they ask you out, and it happens to be every weeknight that they ask you out and you say no, you're going to lose that friend, right? And that may be a fear for you that you don't want to lose that friend. So how do you fix that? You set an expectation. You have to tell the people inviting you, listen, I would love to go out with you, but I prefer to go out on the weekends. During the week is really tough for me. I don't want to go out tonight. right? Another example was, the client I was working with last night, he's having difficulty stopping work at 5 o'clock. He works remotely, and when you work remotely, you don't have a commute time. So you feel like you could give an extra 15, 30, 60 minutes to your work. So I said to him, let's set a boundary. What's your boundary? He goes, I don't want to work after 5 o'clock. I said, great. That's the boundary. Now, how do we create that boundary in a way that it can be fully supported and develop that boundary to be supported? And I said, why don't we put something physical in place so that it helps you? I said, what's the big reason for why you work after 5 o'clock? He goes, people are still sending me emails and I feel obligated to answer them. I said, okay, great. Now I understand what we need to do. So I said, first, make yourself unavailable after 5 o'clock. Set up an out of office that says you're out of the office. You'll be back to work at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Make it a simple thing. It doesn't have to be this major boundary that you honor yourself with. But sometimes just putting up that boundary will stop the work from happening. Or you could physically shut off the computer. Or, set the expectation along with the boundary that you're not available after 5 o'clock. Make it clear. So we decided to do the out of office message. We decided to set a clear expectation. I'm currently unavailable, not accessing my messages after 5 o'clock. I'll get back to them tomorrow morning. And therefore, it's a clear expectation. And that clear expectation now supports the boundary that you've put in place. So what boundaries are you having difficulty putting in place for yourself? If you want some help with that and you're struggling with that and something's getting in the way, give me a call, 631-451-1039. That's 631-451-1039. We are live. We had a few minutes left in the show, and I want to be able to help you. I'm here to serve you. That's what my job is. I'm here to serve you, to help you make your life better, to do the things that you need so that you can live more freely with better boundaries. And if these topics are resonating with you, I want you to call in. I want to hear from you. I know that I'm probably talking to somebody right now who's really struggling in their job or in their relationship. And I can guarantee you one of the reasons why you're struggling is because you're not communicating your strong boundaries. You're not putting up strong boundaries. So you need to think about what I'm saying, and I hope it resonates with you. And I would love to help you to resolve the issues that you're having. So, think about what you need first, right? That's the big thing that people often don't realize about their expectations. Is we only can set expectations and boundaries if we know what we need. We need to know what we need first. So I believe there's a caller on the line, and I want to get to her. So I think it's Dee from Hop Hog. So Dee, welcome to the show. Thanks for calling in.
Hi, thank you. How you doing?
Great. What can I help you with today?
So the reason why I'm calling is I have a problem with my family. I've been dating a guy for a couple of years that my family does not like. They don't want to be near him at all because of an incident that happened between me and him.
Right.
Now I'm avoiding my family. So, with the guy, we've been together for a while, and we have a good relationship, and it's causing me major problems.
So, what is something that you would like to see happen? What would your ideal situation be in this case?
To be able to be accepted at family functions.
Okay, and what do you need from your family at this time to be able to be accepted?
They would have to be the ones who are going to accept it.
They would have to accept him, right? They would have to. Have you set any groundwork for that repair of that relationship to happen?
I pretty much told them that if they're inviting me to places without him, I'm not going.
Okay. So this is a situation I see often. This is, there's always some kind of strain. I don't know what happened in the past, and what I often encourage people to remember is the past is the past, and if you've chosen to be with this person, this is someone that's important to you, we're going to have to figure out a way to make that work for everybody, right? So, it's sometimes, it has to be a give and a take, but it has to be the clear expectation that you set, and I think you've set a pretty clear expectation. And if your family is not responsive to that expectation, that is really going to need a deeper conversation one-on-one with the key person that is really getting in the way of it the most, right? Because typically it's one or two people that are putting up their own barrier and their own boundary to that, correct? I'm sure it's like one or two people, right? So
exactly. 2 people.
It's two. Yep. So it's usually 2 people, 1 or 2, and they're going to be the toughest ones to convince. So here's the thing. Work on everybody else first. Work on the people who do accept you. Work on making sure you show up when those family members invite you. And if the other people are invited to the same place and they're not willing to make a change, that's their choice. And sometimes the hardest thing that we have to sometimes do is let go of those people who are not allowing us to be who our true self is. And if this person that you're with is allowing you to be yourself and be your truest version of yourself, you need to honor that first. And I'm not saying to cause more discord, but recognize that you have a choice and that they have a choice as well. I'd love to talk to you further about it. I would encourage you, if you have a chance, reach out to me on tommarino.com and fill out a contact form. And Dee, thanks again for calling in. I would really like to talk further with you and see if we can help you out. So go to my website, tommarino.com. Fill out a contact form, and on my radio page, leave a comment. Ask me a question that you want answered on the air, and I will happily answer that. So it's been real fun. I look forward to talking to you next week, and until then, choose your adrenalized life.
Give me all you got and don't hold it back.